Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. And I'm really excited that this is the week that the winner of the Women's Prize for Fiction and the winner of the Women's Prize for Nonfiction are being announced, and it's just so exciting. I feel like I've been under so many kind of different pressures over the last few weeks, months. There's been a lot going on, so apologies for my absence generally. And I almost forgot to make this video. I almost ran out of time actually, because we've just been so busy since we've come back from Romania, and with different tasks around the house for renovations, and we're waiting for tradespeople, and my PhD deadline that's coming up for my chapter, and yeah, so there's a lot going on, but I'm trying to manage it all and continue to read, a little bit every day to try to it's just a nice little routine to have. So trying to clear my mind of all these other kind of stressors, in life. So yeah, so that's kind of what's been going on with me. But I will hopefully start relaxing soon, and we're going on another holiday soon. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. But today I'm here to give you my final 2 reviews of the Women's Prize for Fiction long list, because I finished reading all 16 books, which I'm very pleased with myself that I've done. And then I will give you my shortlist, like my top 6, and then what I think might win, / what I want to win. But yeah, we'll get to that a bit later. The penultimate book that I finished from the long list was Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshananthan. And I don't know that I loved it, but bear with me. I don't know that I loved it because it was so emotionally draining. But I did really, really appreciate the impact that it had. So I appreciate what it was trying to do and what it did. I listened to the audiobook of that, and I thought it was really well performed. And there are moments, I remember I was walking back from work, so I always listen to a bit of audiobook, and I was listening, and I remember just having this moment where I was listening to something and be like it just hit me almost like in my chest, like really like deep emotional impact. And there was so many bits like that because it was very harrowing, obviously. And I loved it. I thought it was extremely well done at the personal level, but also I thought at kind of a more like a larger look, like a larger context at the political level, what happened in Sri Lanka, even though sometimes I feel like there was missing a little bit of background, but also I guess, the reader has to kind of fill in those gaps, like if you're interested in like finding out more and you go and look for it. I was like Googling lots of stuff, but also I thought like the personal aspect of this female character, and obviously her brothers like going in and out of all these situations, and her friends, and I don't want to say anything because I feel like everything is almost like a spoiler, because like at every step something happens, and I don't want to ruin that for anyone. I thought it's one that, frankly, I think it's one to read, definitely, like a must read, especially for the context that it came out of. And yeah, I thought it was quite a lovely voice. I know I've heard some people say that they felt it was a bit cold, but I think it's maybe the background of the author / the main character, because they share that they've become doctors and they're kind of almost writing this story to bear witness to what's happened. So I think there has to have been that little step back, which I don't think in narrative fiction is the best, but I still think it did a good job at emotional impact at a personal level of like being like, oh my gosh, like being with this character on her journey, sometimes not understanding the choices she made, but going on it with her. So yeah, a very, very good book, but we'll discuss that a bit later as well. And finally, the last book, and definitely not the least, that I read from the long list was In Defense of the Act by Effie Black. And I've mentioned this one because I received this book back, I want to say late March or April, whenever I ordered it, because I couldn't find it anywhere. So I ordered it from the publisher, and I started just flipping through the first pages, and I thought it was really funny and well written in a way that's just so witty, you know, like I was really with the character's voice. But I think that stops really quickly because it becomes very, very much about trauma from like the second, third chapter. Like it's very quickly about people ending their own lives. The main character is a researcher looking into, I think it's through spiders specifically, which I thought was really interesting, but looking at how or why certain species have suicide amongst like their communities. And it kind of starts with her having basically stopped her father from ending it, I think with pills or something. It's very early on, it's like the second chapter, so no spoilers. And then we kind of go through many different parts of her life, and that was really well written. I think it was Keir Scrivener that said like how well the characters are built and like drawn. Like sometimes the characters are in one chapter but you really get a sense of them, and I thought that was so true. And yeah, so I thought it was really well written. I do think the funniness of it stops, so I was like, okay, which makes sense because it is about a lot of traumatic things that have happened, and also about trauma, like, and how that affects you and how you kind of go on with life, because as we go on, you kind of see how the different blocks, the different chapters like build upon each other. And I thought that was really nice. And when I finished this book, I remember I closed it and I was like, okay. And it followed me for days after I finished reading it. I was like really thinking about it and being like, wow, this book is really staying with me, because I don't know that I thought, because I think I predicted this as maybe a wild pick for the shortlist. And the more I was reading it, the more I was like, yeah, maybe it's not like as big of an impactful book, you know? But when I finished it and I closed it, I was like, actually, it had a huge impact on me. And I think it was a really incredible read. And I'm so happy so many people have gave it a chance, because I know at the beginning, especially, you know, you say about suicide, and a lot of people are like, nah, I'm not touching that. I'm not reading that. I don't want to trigger, or I don't want to see why in defense of the act, you know. So yeah, I thought it was actually really good. I'm really happy I bought it and read it, and I encourage you to do so as well if it's not subject that is too triggering to you, obviously, because there's a lot of mentioned of that act through this book. And so that was it. I've given you all 16 reviews, and I'm so happy and pleased that I actually made it through in about just a bit less than 3 months. And, you know, managed it before the winner was announced. Not quite the shortlist, because that was a bit too short. But yeah, I had a really good time. I think it was a really strong list, actually. There's a few that I was like, oh God, did I read this? There's maybe 1 or 2 that I wished I DNF'd, that I just don't think were worth reading. But getting a whole idea, you know, a whole portrait of this prize was really good. Now I'm going to give you my shortlist, my top 6 of the list, after having read the whole list. And mine is a little different than the judges, but, you know, to each their own. But yes, in 6th place, I put Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. I didn't look forward to reading this book. I still blame it on the cover. But I actually really enjoyed what Megan Nolan did, and also I really went with the story. Like I've mentioned, I don't think all 3 Irish books should have been on the shortlist, but for me, it's definitely in the top, and I definitely enjoyed it more than Duran Duran. In number 5, I've actually put In Defense of the Egg by Effie Black. I didn't think that this was gonna make my shortlist, actually, when I was reading it, but then by the time I finished it, like I've just mentioned, it was just so impactful that I was like, it has to make, like, if I'm looking at all these books and seeing which one like really stayed with me, this was 100% one of them. In number 4, and I know it's a bit of a controversial title to put here because I see a lot of people find it so boring and DNF it, whatever, but I've put Western Lane by Chetna Maru because I just thought it was a beautifully quiet novel about grief, about growing up. Yes, there was too much squash, but I still loved it. In number 3, we have 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Marinette Lee. And I read this one recently as well, because obviously I left the book that I owned for last. I read it in May, and God, what a brilliant book. And so many weave stories, and it just kept me, like in French we have a thing where it keeps you up to breath. Like it keeps you going. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. And this book definitely did that for me. And I read it really quickly. Even my husband at some point was like, oh my God, you read that so quick. Because I was struggling to put it down because I kept being like, wait, but if this happened here at this time, then what age was she when this happened? And then what character was this? And I was trying to piece it all together, and I loved it. And it reminded me, I've mentioned in my review in the previous video, of one of my favorite films, Big Fish, because of like the different stories and the persona of the character that's telling these stories in old age. And yeah, I just thought it was really good. And honestly, I find it a crime that like this, for example, hasn't been picked over something like River East, River West. But anyway, let's move on from that. In second, what did I find in second? In second, I've put Brotherless Night by Bibi Ganeshananthan. And this is because, in first place, I've left, because it's been there since I read it, Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. Just nothing overtook that for me in terms of emotionally touching me in a very vulnerable and personal way. And also, I think the way it built up for me being like, oh God, like, yeah, maybe I don't want children, to like at the end being like, oh my God, that's so beautiful, the bond with the child and the mother. And like, basically I feel like I went through that journey with the character, and I thought that was really, really well done. So I ended up putting Brotherless Night in second, because even though I thought it was really, really good, for me it just didn't quite overtake Soldier Sailor. However, in terms of actually winning, I think that Brotherless Night has a really good chance. Because like I mentioned, I think it has that political impact. And it's really, really well done. And I feel like I went with the character. So I think that's my pick for winner. Even though obviously I will be so happy if Soldier or Sailor wins. I think Enter Ghost has a really good chance, but again, I leave my actual pick for winner with Brotherless Night. But I think Enter Ghost has a really, really good chance. And as I mentioned previously, I need to give another chance to that book because I feel like I really enjoyed it, but I felt really distanced from it, and also really, like, I thought it was a bit forgettable in the personal aspect of it. Not in like the political aspect, but in the personal aspect. So I want to give it another chance because maybe I wasn't in the right mind. I was like at the end of like my really big like prize fatigue. So I feel like if I give it another chance, maybe it would be in my top 6. And I see why it is on the prizes top 6 for sure. So I think it has a good chance for winning. In all honesty, if River East River, I don't actually see it winning, but I didn't see it being on the shortlist. So my God, I don't think that that debut deserves a win. And now the other two. The big names, you know. Obviously we have Restless Dolly Maunder by Kay Grenville, and we have Duran Duran by Anne Enright. I think both of them are arguably, and with a bit of distance, good book. Yeah, alright. Do I think they are memorable? That there would be book that I would reread, that I would be like, whoa, did I think that these books had an impact on me? No, none of these things. So I personally don't think that they really belong on this shortlist. But I definitely don't think that they would be up for winner. And I think if they do, I would be really interested to hear what the judges have to say. Because for me, it feels like they've been put there because they're the big names. Because they have that legacy. I don't think Anne Enright has won. I think Kate Grenville has won before. So I feel like that's potentially why they're here. And maybe for them, there's like a more subtle impact of these books. But for me, like the bigger impact for sure. Brotherless Night Enter goes at the political kind of global level that's so important, especially right now. And Soldier Sailor at the very kind of emotional, personal woman kind of experience. So yeah, I'm happy I went through this journey. It was exhausting and I'm so happy to be out of it. Although a few of the books I've picked up have been non-fiction. that has been a bit heavy, and also nonfiction from the Women's Prize for Nonfiction long list. So really, I'm continuing the experience a little bit, but soon I need to, you know, read some romance and chill a little bit. In terms of the Women's Prize for Nonfiction, I just wanted to do a little quick kind of parenthesis here at the end. Obviously, I haven't actually been following the prize that much. One, I haven't had the coping, you know, time and everything, mind space to do it. Two, I've really struggled to get my hands on some of these books. My hold for All That She Carried has just come in, so I will be reading it, but I'm not starting it until probably well later into June. So yeah, definitely not before the prize is announced. But I still want to do predictions. One that, you know, you take it with a grain of salt, since it's completely, you know, not an educated choice. But I feel like, because of a lot of the hype and a lot of the stuff that's been going on, I feel like the prize might go to Naomi Klein for Doppelganger. I don't really know as much about the other books, but you know, I've heard amazing things about How to Save Babylon, and obviously All That She Carried. I'm so excited to see on this list and to hear, like, to read. I actually am quite, at some point I would like to read A Flat Place, definitely. And Thunderclap is a really interesting one as well. So I think it's really difficult to know where this is going to go, especially without having read any of them. But it does feel like the hype is going to Naomi Klein. So I'm going to just predict that. But I will be back later this week when they've announced, and just do a little tiny reaction to the winners, and we'll see what's happened and, you know, what the judges have picked for this year, because it could always be different depending on who picks and, you know, what's going on in the world right now. So very excited. Do you have a pick for the winner for either prize? Let me know in the comments who you think deserves it, who you think is going to win, even though maybe that's not your favorite, but who you think might win. And which one was your favorite to read? I would love to know. Obviously, I've given you my top 6 for the fiction, and I've had a really good adventure through all of that. And thank you for following along and looking at all my videos, which have been a bit sparse and a bit kind of all over the place. Anyway, as always, thank you for watching again, and hey, see you back. Bye.